Hello, everybody. Everybody who's out there in the hallway should come in and sit down, but they're not paying a bit of attention, so all right. I'm Wendell King. Good evening. Welcome to the Weisman. I'm the director of the Weisman, and I'm happy to have you here this evening for this great program. Tom Rose and I agreed that this was not going to be an evening of reciting everyone's extensive resumes, which they all have, but that it was going to be an evening of meaty discussion. So I'm just going to start by introducing Tom. Tom has collaborated with Wham in many adventures, being one of the first artists to do an installation here shortly after the museum opened. Next year it will be 25 years. Can you believe it? Still seems like the new museum. Tom no longer teaches full-time in the Department of Art here at the U, but that doesn't mean he's resting on his laurels. Tom has been very active in the university's exchange with China and was basically initiated an exchange with Beijing for Chinese and Minnesota students. And this program is the result of many years of contacts that Tom has made and that others here at the university have made. And so we're very happy to be part of to be the beneficiaries of all that work and that you can help us enjoy it. So please welcome my colleague and friend, an artist of great distinction, entrepreneur, citizen of the world, and force of nature, Tom Rose.
Well, I have to read my too. Welcome. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this exhibition and this evening's discussion. Jizi, Journey of the Spirit. The exhibition and educational programs honor the artist, his work, and life, and are part of a 4-year project mapping transitions to the vehicle of the arts, funded by the Henry Luce Foundation. This project was developed by a consortium of faculty and schools and curators from institutions in the region, each with departments in the history of art and Chinese art, or history of China and Chinese art. Kathleen Royer, Carleton College; Carol Pachera, St. Olaf College; Elizabeth Kindall, University of St. Thomas; Carol Brash, Colleges of St. Benedict and St. John's; Rivi Hendler-Spitz, McAllister College; Dr. Liu Yang, Curator of Chinese Arts, Minneapolis Institute of Arts; Dr. Ann Waltner and Joseph Allen, University of Minnesota, and administered by Evelyn David Heiser, Assistant Dean, Global Studies, University of Minnesota, and in coordination with the Minxing Art Museum in Beijing. I offer my sincere gratitude to Wendell King, Director of the Weisman Museum, for her initial and continuing enthusiasm for the work and exhibition. Special thanks to Diane Mullen, Curator, and my personal guide through the labyrinth of museum exhibition planning and organization. Christopher Williams for his superb installation and problem solving, and to his expert crew. And also to Jamie Young for her education program coordinator, and the interns Ashley Wood, Zoe Lalanda, and Yoshang Wang. And in addition, a deep appreciation to the Henry Luce Foundation, the board and supporters of the Weisman Museum for the additional funding, for the additional funding from Kaime and Joseph Terry and Mr. Al Sedgwick, the China Center and Confucius Institute of the University of Minnesota, Ms. Pearl Burgat of the Chinese Heritage Foundation, and Jean Kilby, Director of the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Minnesota. Next page. The general direction of the discussion comes from the first of Jizi's meditations on his work. I have named my paintings the Tao of Ink Landscapes. The Tao is the spirit of the great universe. What I seek as an artist is the unification of heaven and earth and man, insight into the Tao, the material universe, and myself. The evening's program is formatted as a conversation between Dr. Wang Chunchen, Chief Curator and Professor of Contemporary Theory at the Central Academy of Fine Art in Beijing. Dr. Ann Waltner, Professor of Chinese History, specifically the Ming Dynasty, Department of History, University of Minnesota. Dr. David Brubaker, a painter and professor of philosophy, author of Jizi and his art. Wuhan Textile University, Wuhan, China. And Dr. Elizabeth Kindall, professor of arts and specifically Chinese painting of the Ming Dynasty, Department of Art History, University of St. Thomas. Dr. Kindall will open the discussion.
We're so thrilled to have Dr. Wang and Dr. Brubaker visiting us in the Twin Cities. All of the schools are so pleased to have you here, and I know that you're all glad to have you here. So to start off our discussion, you know, Ann and I were talking about this panel before we all met, and she said, I've just gone to see the exhibition. I've just seen the Epic of Nature. I've got to talk about it immediately. So you had a question, and I wanted to start off with you. What you wanted to bring out there?
Well, for any of you who haven't done this yet, what you need to do before you leave this building is go into the gallery that has the painting, The Epic of Nature, in it. It's 165 feet. It wraps the room. And what you have to do is you have to go and stand in the middle of the room. And I think if you go and stand in the middle of the room, you will learn something very important about Chinese painting. You may be both traditional Chinese painting and modern Chinese painting. One of the important theoretical concepts in Chinese painting is often translated into English as spirit resonance. And I think if you stand in the middle of the room, you can imagine the painting resonating with you. So I think that is something that I think is really important. I have a student who emailed me a couple of days ago and said, I just found out I'm going to be a chaperone for my daughter's class to come to see the exhibit. What can you say that will be fun for 9-year-olds? And I said, tell them to stand in the middle of the room. And I saw him as he was coming out of the Museum of 9-year-olds, and he said, I thought that was a strange thing to say. And then we all went and we stood in the middle of the room. So that's a comment on Epic of Nature. I guess I have a second comment, and then I really will turn the microphone over to people who know much more than I do. For example, he was your father. But I think that one of the things that is true of all of the paintings, but I think is particularly true of the snow paintings, is they are so clearly Chinese landscape paintings, and they so clearly are paintings that are recent paintings. And I think in a really interesting visual way, they are an answer to the question, one answer to the question of how can I be a painter who is both Chinese and modern. So those are just my thoughts from a little bit of time in the galleries.
Well, that I think brings us to a great kind of first topic, which would be this Tao of ink. What did that mean to Jizi? Dr.
For Tao of ink, there's Taoism, of course, but it's a way of unification, and there are multiple ways, actually. So there's a way of Taoism, there's a way of Buddhism, a way of Confucianism. And so one thing about the paintings is that they're very pluralistic in that sense. They're very much integrating different points of view. So the one thing we might want to talk about is that the Tao of Ink emphasizes the invisible, a realm that's larger that can't be seen, and that's very, very original to his work. So there's some ways in which he maintains continuity with the Russian ink tradition and the scenery landscape tradition, Shui tradition, emphasizing this realm of the invisible and Taoist. We can talk about this. That's really looks to be an original contribution he's making to the tradition.
Yeah. First, I should say thanks for the Weisman Museum, to the director Kim and Linda and Tom Rose. Because actually, I visited America. The first stop is this city. It's the University of Minnesota. It is in 2009, so I'm impressed. I was impressed greatly since then. So I should say thank you for all people from Minnesota, Minneapolis. So it's a, this is a chance. This is an opportunity. I don't know. Finally, today, and I come here again, also with my father, with his works, with his art. So that is, I should say, I do feel honored, also very moved, very emotional, because you see, because of this reason, I should say, just as the title of this, it is spirituality. So when we say what is spirituality, this is closely linked to Tao. Tao is a Chinese term, but we can understand this term universally as logos. It's a Greek word. Also, we can understand it as a kind of a universal law governing us from every aspect of our life, from our daily life to our spiritual life, even to our imagination, to anything. Because Tao is a very important idea of philosophy. We use this Tao refers to any kind of things, even today. But for the painting of Chinese art, if we say we have the Chinese ink painting, as it is called before, we never call Tao of ink. We just Tao of calligraphy, as it is called in Japan. As we call Tao of tea, you know that, how to drink tea. Even Tao of medicine, how can cure your body and make yourself healthy, but never link ink to Tao. This is the first time by my father to link Tao with ink, because ink is a very important medium for Chinese painting. Because if you think, ink is a term, it's just a material. Why it is so important? But in Chinese, ink in Chinese sounds like more. It's quite meaningful, meaning any kind of things, because more can be described as the basis of the word. Because even it looks like black, but if we paint it, it can become colorful. From the light black to the dark black, even into the white color, also seems as ink. Okay, actually, my father learned his paintings when he was very young, just in late 50s. At that time he was just the teenagers, and he started his self-taught artist. He never went to any art school. He just taught himself, and learned how to make paintings by books. Visit Forbidden City Museum to look at how the ancient Chinese painting was made. Then he came back, try to remember, try to imitate. Because at that time, even the textbook is not so popular. It's less, you couldn't buy such a kind of books. He just remembered that by train from my hometown to Beijing. And he told me, later in the 80s, he told me, not told me, he tried to think of, as you said, make the traditional Chinese ink and wash painting into the modernized method or styles. And traditionally we say it's the brush and stroke. He thought, I need to develop the brush stroke into the snow painting, snow style. From snow style in the late 80s, he said, after he read many books about Taoism, Confucianism, and even Buddhism, because just during 80s, such a kind of ideas or books reprinted again, because during Cultural Revolutionary period, you cannot buy such books. They are called poisonous books, or poisonous grass. So just during the 80s, people try to reread, re-understand what is the legacy or tradition in Chinese culture. From that period, my father reread that book. He found it is so important for his art, for his painting. So he think, why I need a doll linked to my painting, because from his experience of life, you know, my father was young, he had no job. He just did some odd jobs as a metalsmith, as a carpenter, as a painter to paint the house, as the carrier to carry the heavy objects or materials, so on and so on. And so he know the painting or art is the only, it's something for himself to support his life. So even during the Cultural Revolution, outside the people, different groups of people just fought each other, even use the rifles and the guns. But my father escaped from that, just stayed at home and then made paintings. So in 80s, he thought, oh, I need make myself transcend the daily life, make myself become over that. So he think Tao is so important. Also, he also found that if he want to make himself as a real artist, he cannot follow suit as before. So he thought, I need to create my own style. But how can I create that? It's not easy. So he thought, maybe it is a way I try something philosophical, something from the real Chinese culture, not just the fake culture. So he thought, I need to think, I need to meditate. Meditation, did some meditation, and try to feel what's going on inside. Of course, he experienced many things mystical. He just told me, I cannot tell you that. If I tell you that, you just take it as a superstition. But he did feel that feeling in his mind. That's why when he linked the doll with the painting, he made the way, just as today we say, oh, so unbelievable. Even for me, unbelievable. Every time I visited my father's home, I could see many new different paintings. So Dao is a way to support my father for his art. Even he take art as his real life. He said, how can I prove myself? Even I didn't have a chance to go to university, but I must take my art as my life, even for the future. Even during my lifetime, maybe nobody knows I'm an artist, but I don't care. I just do it. So that is what he did for all his life until last day of his life. Because when he passed away in 2015, just 2 months before the last day, he did a series of paintings. Of course, I didn't bring that to 3 pieces to this exhibition. It's because it's too sad for me. I couldn't see that. I wrote it. I just want to look at that painting some years later. So that is a basic description of his life and really his style. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a really interesting intro to this idea of your father as seeking a kind of a philosophical, spiritual expression but not a religious expression. And Dr. Brubaker, you were talking about that last night. You know, it's not a religious expression. I was hoping we could get into some of the paintings themselves and how you think he was expressing those ideas of the Tao.
This is a really interesting point because in conversation he would say, well, my paintings are not religious paintings, but they definitely have a spiritual quality. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is, he might have said they have some sort of religious sentiment, which is something that's part of religion, but it's not doctrine. Now that's very interesting. So the idea that, I think in philosophy, we might call it religious experience or religious awareness. And if you look at different in philosophy, if you look at different religious traditions, there usually is in each major religion, there's usually a component of people who emphasize religious awareness and experience. So it is something that you could argue that it is something that goes across different religious traditions. That would be more like Jizi, actually. And so it's a way, we constantly say, you can look at my paintings from a Buddhist perspective, or a Confucian perspective, or a Taoist perspective, or you could look at them from the point of view from someone who's a citizen of the world, right? Who's not in China. Yeah. And so, now that's very exciting, actually. Yeah, because it's more, it seems to me it's culturally what, there's a longing for that. So there's kind of authenticity is preserved for the awareness and the experience, but it doesn't require a division and separation or ranking different religions. So it's almost like a basis for different doctrines. So maybe you want to respond.
Well, I mean, just to give an example of that from the paintings that are out in the galleries, I was really interested in the spheres and the circles, and sometimes it seems to me that the spheres are an eye, and sometimes it seems like it's a globe, and sometimes it seems like it's the moon, and sometimes you see the sphere as kind of an entryway from one realm into another. And so I think, you know, when we look at the spheres and think those things, that may not be what he was thinking when he was painting them, but the painting communicates. And I think that's sort of what, I was reminded of that as you were talking.
Well, the other one thing to remember is he's very interested in different dimensions. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at all of his works, some works will have several different dimensions. As his mission statement, or his statement of Tao, of material universe, maybe phenomenal world, and then myself, those are three, it's like he's suggesting there are three different ways there of experiencing or being aware, connected, it's like being connected or being unified. So I think we can see that you know, the connection between the three that he's making, and the globes clearly in some of his works are there's some smaller works that he has. They're sort of like the meditation series, and the globes are sometimes it looks like there's a sphere and there's a an image inside the sphere. So it's an internal image of the external world. So it's definitely, so it's almost like there's a way of looking that's human, and then there's the phenomenal world that's different from your own book, and then there's Tao, which is sort of a more cosmic realm. So that, I think, marks him as even more, not more interesting to say, but more varied and more inclusive than even modern art. If metaphysics is about existence, and his paintings are about a breadth of existence, which is really creative and fresh.
I can say something about the circle because I never asked my father why you did so many painted so many circles. But from David's writing, I noticed, in many works of his paintings, and my father painted many circles. So I try to understand it by my way of myself. Yeah, because Dao in Chinese, we can put it into yin-yang. Yin-yang can make the circle. Also, circle in Chinese means perfect. Also, circle is a kind of a thing, it is the highest, something very highest. You must go inside, you must catch it, so that is a circle. Also, circle, as you said, is a kind of way to go into another space. So when you notice the circle in the painting, it is like a new way go into another space. Sometimes they take it as even he take the circle as the highest spirituality, because of what? Some people, like some friend of mine, asked me, how did your father make that circle so round? It seems that he used some devices to make. Actually, no. He just did that by brush, by hand, very circle. It is so skillful that. So later you can see that how skillful as a round circle.
Perfect. We're talking a lot about these kind of interesting dialogues, and we were talking about this actually at the galleries as we were looking at the paintings, these dialogues between something macro and a micro level. We're seeing these historical references and these sort of modern painterly techniques. We see these very interesting kind of hanging scroll formats, but they're not mounted as hanging scrolls. So it seems as though he has these very interesting dialogues within the paintings. And I was curious from all of you what you thought as far as who he was painting this for. Was this for himself? Is this his personal vision? Did he have a larger message? Is he expecting us to take something away particularly? I'm sure it varies from painting to painting, but with those dialogues, what do you see him do?
In his later life, when he found that links between Dao and the painting, or Dao and the Yin, he thought that is his ambitious mission. He thought, I must realize my mission to express something, but we never know what is that something. He told me, I found something from the universe. That's why his painting cannot be called landscape painting or sunshui painting. It is kind of universal or universe. He likes that. That is a painting, that scroll is called epic of nature. Actually, in Chinese, it means reason, or it's like a seeing sun. It's like some spirit seeing a sun for the universe. But it's too long. I cannot put it into the correct English. So I put it as an epic of nature, or song of nature. And because some people think that it's a symphony, like the music from beginning, it's like the creation or genesis of our world or universe. Because he liked to express something from the universe, because nobody knows that. he tried to feel that, even from his reading of Taoist books or even Buddhist books, he found that there's something written already many, many years ago in that book, very mystical, very spiritual. So he thought, if we as a human, if we can understand that, so we will become more harmonious, more human. So we will become, just more, we will overcome many, many difficulties. Just become what is that term? Elevated? I don't know. Elevated? Yeah, something like that.
Well, I think from the point of view of philosophy, what it is to be human is also an issue here, because he's really, I think that's a question in all cultures, and also your American cultures, in the past 50 years. What is it to be human, really? Is it to be embodied? Is it to be, I think the older kind of early modern ways, it's to be rational, and maybe the body is, you use the body, but you're not, it's not you, you're not sort of integrated. So I think the idea of a heaven and a human, or heaven and earth and the human as being one, in Chinese philosophy, there's something very different going on. And also, there's an integration. It's like you don't have heaven or Tao manifests itself in the human. It's like they're not separate. So it's like Tao, my understanding is that like Tao manifests through people. People actually have a way of manifesting Tao through their lives. Yeah, I think so. So this is, there's something additional, different. And also the mystical, the sort of mysticism part, I think in the video you really recommend having a look at the video in the gallery. It's wonderful. And again, from the point of view of philosophy, mysticism is not otherworldly. It's unification. It's you don't leave this world, really. Right? It's like it's unification. It's seeing your life here now in a different way that connects with other things, or what connects with life as a whole. But in people, it just the look of it changes. And so I think this is important. So the connection with nature and mysticism, sometimes there's a problem with when you can't name the thing that you're talking about. Yeah. So it's like, it's ineffable, you can't talk about it. But I think the point to remember here is because there's a, this is something we could talk about, but when your father talks about the mystical, he's talking about being more connected, being more closely unified with nature and other people. Yeah, so there's something very interesting and special.
Well, we have to talk about process for the artists out there. So you, when you were growing up, watched your father paint, and can you describe his process for us? How did he prepare himself? How did he have certain types of brushstrokes that he practiced? Was calligraphy a major influence in his painting process?
It is during Cultural Revolution. At that time, I was just 2 or 3 years old, because I was born in 1964. The Cultural Revolution started at 1966. I just 2 years old. Because my father did painting every day, even he did that late night. And even some of his friends visited my father. Also, they are very young. They just chatted for art. they didn't talk about other things, just talk about art and the painting. So, during that time, the Chinese family, we only have one house, which is used as a bedroom, kitchen, and a studio for my father. And so, because the friend stayed there very late, they didn't leave. So, my mother couldn't sleep, so I couldn't sleep. I just sat there, listened to them, even very small baby. And actually, my father not only made ink painting, ink and wash, he also learned the sketching, the drawing, also oil painting, also the wood cutting. And during the Cultural Revolution, because he didn't have any permanent job in a state-owned factory, he only looked for the odd jobs. So one day, because during the Cultural Revolution, a lot of units, they need have the big portrait of Mao Zedong. Of course, how can you have that? You must have some artist to paint that. So my father is skillful for that. So he was recommended by his brother-in-law to do that. So they just tried this. So they found, he's so skillful. So later he was required or hired for this job. Then he made the big mural paintings about Mao, use oil painting. Because during the Cultural Revolution, a lot of such oil pigments factory stopped producing such material. So my father went to Tianjin oil pigment factory to learn how to make that. So he bought the second-hand grinding machine, brought back to his hometown. He made the oil pigment by himself during the Cultural Revolution, because he had to read books, the chemistry books, to use different materials. So he's a person like to study by himself. Okay, because of this, he learned anything without any restriction. If he learned something in the academy, he will be influenced by his teachers or tutors. But just because of this, he's free in thinking. So he tried to use any kind of things for his thinking. And even for the wood cutting, you know that wood cutting is black and white, strong contrast between the different background. For the oil painting, he learned how to master the light, because for the long run, his painting is very beautiful for the lighting, the dark and the light. So in one of the painting on the corridor, you can see how my father used ink to produce or to make the effects of the light. So he learned a lot of such from another kind of art, not just the ink and painting. And of course, also he liked to read books. He liked to read novels, not only Chinese novels, even the foreign novel, like the Russian novel, Soviet Union during that period. Even he liked the poetry very much. And even he wrote ancient Chinese style of poems. So he's the person, even he played the music, like the erhu, even the flute. So he's a person, even his life is bitter, suffered a lot, but still he is very, what is that term? I'm sorry. Not a pessimistic. Yeah, optimistic. He's very optimistic. Trying to make himself happy with himself by art.
Well, there's an insider's view, and I'm going to ask one more question of Dr. Brubaker, and then we'll open the floor to questions from you. So, how did you get to know Jizi, and we've heard the family view, the insider's view. How did you meet him, and what were those interviews like? You interviewed him many times for your books.
Yes, so I met, I was 2008, 2010, I came to China to conferences for philosophy and aesthetics. I saw some connections. There was, I think today there's an opportunity to start a dialogue that's deeper than earlier decades, maybe. So anyway, and Wang Chunchen in the 2010
I
talk.
met him by chance in Seminar 8 on air.
This is true, right?
It is true. I met him
About-
interviewed by another professor,
Yeah.
Chinese professor.
This is true, yeah, from Beijing, yeah. So it was by chance in 798, and then we talked and about painting, and enthusiasm was contagious, I have to say, from Dr. Wang. And then I went, I think your father had an exhibition around the same time, so I went to see the exhibition. And for myself, both as an artist and as who got into philosophy by asking, I went to art school first, and it's like I went into philosophy with the questions of with existence, what is it? What can I notice? What is it that I'm noticing? That's not being talked about. So anyway, that got me into philosophy, but always from the point of view of an artist. And I'm just immediately attracted to the philosophical depth of the paintings because of the way it addresses philosophical questions through the compositions of showing the dimensions. So there's something that description is good for, and there's some things that you can show. And I think that's what the exciting thing about the paintings is. There's something very just exciting about the paintings historically. Do you know what I'm saying? Really, it's like a way of showing the relationship between parts of the universe and life. And I think of it as I mean, it's like Mondrian, maybe. It's showing the structure and relationship between parts of the world and human life, but it's sort of broader in a way. It's reaching out from middle to ends, micro to macro, something quite special. So I was hooked and decided to come over, and then talked with him, I don't know, 6 or 7 times. So.
Yeah, because he was in Beijing in 2010, and the next year, 2011, he came back to New York, and as a professor in New Haven University. So after he came back, he wrote 2 pieces of papers on Jizi. But because of this writing, he found there must be something he doesn't know, he didn't know. So I met him in New York in 2011, winter time. So we talked that. He said, I wanted to continue my study about Jizi, your father. How can I do that? I said, why not come back to China again? So he applied a teacher position. So finally, he succeeded, got that job in China. So he came back, returned to China as a professor to teach English of art, in English, to teach art in English. So in his spare time, he came to Beijing by train to interview my father for several times, many times. I interpreted for him, translated for him. We used the video camera to record all such interviews for over, more than 100 hours. 100 hours.
Yeah, it was actually
that much.
Yeah, I was lucky to get a sort of research position in an art and design program. So I was teaching actually teaching painting and drawing too. So
Okay, I should say because of his question interview with my father. Because of that, I learned something from my father. Even I didn't know before. Because I'm as a son, he never taught me something about his own life. It is true. For example, I never know how my father's father died. Because when I was a kid, I never know. I call him grandfather. It is my step-grandfather. It's not my, his father. Just because of his asking, I learned that. My father's father died in 1957, suicide, committed suicide because of his terrible life and political, campaign. So I learned that, how terrible my father's childhood.
Well, with that basis for conversation, we'd like to hear from you. So I'd like to open the floor to questions. Please wait for the microphone to come to you so everyone can hear, and I'll pass this to our...
Hello, thank you very much for your time and coming here. I was curious, looking at the Tao of ink painting, I'm interested in kind of Christian mysticism and the idea of the ultimate reality, and that seemed kind of an expression of that, but it seemed, at least from my feeling, very, very dark and a lot of struggle there. Could you maybe talk about if I'm totally off base, or what's going on in that painting? And then my second question would be, could you talk about his namesake, why you picked the name Jizi, and what that means? Thank you.
Actually, even my father called his painting as a Tao of ink, but he wanted, in his painting, he wanted to express a kind of a tragic sublimity. He likes sublimity, something we must be sublime. Sometimes tragic, it means struggles, because his life is full of bitter experience. From his, even in China, some people, when look at his painting, they said, oh, from your painting, I could feel your life is not easy. Because of that, it means, of course, on another side, he wants to express his understanding, even with nature. Nature can tell something, even without the figures. And also, because he likes to read novels. Even in his library, he has a book, Paradise Lost by Humility. Even he is a Buddhist, he believes in Buddhism, but also he's open to Christianity. Even in home, he has a book, Bible. Sometimes he knows some story about that. So he wants to express the fortune or fate of a human, even to use the nature or landscape like that. This is one thing. Another thing is Jizi, because I'm called Wang Chunchen. Wang is my family name. He got this Jizi in late or maybe early 80s. When he first used his pen name, I argued with him, with my father. I said, why you should change your name from Wang to Jizi? Because I didn't know what's the reason. The reason is very simple, 3 reasons. First, because Chinese people always like to call the son of Emperor Yan and Emperor Huang, because these, of course, is legendary emperors or kings. Their name, their family name is called Ji. It means if this name is Asian ancestors' Chinese name, so everybody should be called son of Ji. This is the first meaning. And second is, in ancient time, if you are master, you will be called Zi. The second son, Zi, means master, like Lao Zi, Zhuang Zi, even Kongzi, Confucius. Actually, the last name is Zi. Zi means master. Of course, also in Chinese it means son. The third reason is because my father said, I must be a master, even nobody recognizes that. I believe in myself, so I must prove that. And the third reason is his original family name is called Ji. Is Ji. Why he changed that? Because I said his father committed suicide because of political campaign. So my grandmother remarried to my step-grandfather. He's called Wang. So just because grandfather just make this family survive because of that difficult time. So my father changed his family name from Ji to Wang as a kind of a gratitude to this stepfather. So 20 years later, in early 80s, just because China is open, many magazines published, many newspapers published. During that time, my father found a problem. He found what? From the newspaper or magazine, he found that there were at least 3 or 4 artists who are called same name as my father, Wang Yun-san. Yun means cloud, San means mountains. This name is made by my father himself while he's in early 60s. And he said, no, I cannot call this again, because if my art finally recognized by the world, who knows who is Wang Yun-san? I must be my unique person. So he said, I must have a new name. Just he want to remember his origin of a family. So he said, Jizi, son of a Ji family. Also, Master Ji, also son of a Chinese people. That is the reason.
Just on that point, you do see the arc, and also some of the figures are William Blake-like, which means I find this as strength. So it's like great art will make references to other art and other cultures. And you get this in Jesus' work, so it's actually it makes it stronger. To Blake, and then also not Dante. Was it Tom? Was it Dante? The Dore. Yeah. It's Inferno, right? Yeah. So he's widely read. So he's widely read on Christian iconography and stories and literature. So part of the darkness is like, about the fallen angels, and he's clearly looking at the Gustave Doré images. It could resonate in a lot of ways as you're thinking.
Thank you all for coming. So I watched the video. And the one thing that stood out for me was I persisted. And as a woman who did not feel comfortable with my partner being an artist because of jealousy, because sometimes an artist, it has to be their priority over everything. And so speaking of the family and your mother, I think the video said my wife accepted, and knowing a friend of mine whose father was an artist, he always felt like my father's art was more important. Can you speak a little bit about any of that experience?
Thank you. I just tell you, maybe you don't believe it. My father, when he passed away in July 2015, in Chinese we have this habit. We must organize or hold activity for the person who passed away every week. It's called. We do that for 49 days. It means 7 weeks. So 2 weeks later, one of my father's friends called me. Chunchen, are you at home? I said, yes, I'm at home. So he came to my mother's house, my hometown. And so came over, then he closed the door, then he talked to me. What I will talk to you? So he said, I will pass some words from your father to you, because last night your father told me something about his, because he died suddenly without leaving any will. So he just used his friend, through the friend mouth, to tell me something. Maybe you don't believe it. Even I don't believe it. But when he sat there in front of me, between the desk, and he smoked, started talking. So he changed, transformed himself as my father. The voice, posture, gesture, not his friend, just my father. The story, the words he used, even the arrangement he talked to me, it's not from him, it's from my father. Even something he never knew that. But something he mentioned is, I do feel pity, or do feel, regret, because in my life, I do much for myself. I just take myself as an artist. I do nothing else. Just your mother take care of the family, even with your children. We have 3 children, me, my younger brother and sister. It is just because your mother do that to make myself. I can have a time to make my art, painting. Also, because my father didn't have a job, especially in the late 80s, he just stayed at home as a, we call that an independent artist. Actually, he's supported by my mother, by the family, because at that time I worked. So my father said, we don't need to raise you up again. So give me time. I don't have much time for my art. So just because I don't eat much, just give me a bowl, just give me a chopstick, so enough. So it is because my mother supports my father totally from their marriage time until his last time. So my father have told me, so that one day, if my art is recognized in the world, the first gratitude I want to say is your mother. So that's why 2 days ago my mother was here, because she liked to look at how her husband showed his works in the world, in America. Yeah.
I would like to say there is, this is all, correct. There were also times when he would work at various jobs earlier on, when he would get sick also. And so that was a time when your mother was supporting the family too. At the same time, there were many jobs that there is some modesty there, and he worked really very hard at steel mills, rail yards, really heavy manual, breaking the stones at a cement factory, to support the family too. So it's a great question. It's a great question, and the answer is, he recognizes how much your mother really did help you. So.
I think we have time for one more.
I'm just wondering, was it your father's desire to have people see his work as he intended them to see him? So what I'm asking is, when he painted something, did he want people to see the literal view of how he wanted it, or did he want people to be able to have their own interpretation of his work?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and when he did his paintings, he know one day his art, his paintings will be noticed or will be, recognized. Even as the people in the future will know his art, his work will be learned. Of course, he likes the person give their own interpretations, their own understanding, no matter what it is. He wants his art to be open, not just from his own explanations. It is true. He said, I just do my work for myself. That is something I can do. For the other things, I cannot. I leave it open for the others, for the world. Even he said, just let my art go by itself. It is because, I should say another thing is, when I was a kid, he never taught me how to paint, never. I just watched him, what he did, then I imitated himself. I used ink painting, I also used oil painting, even I carved the seals by myself, just I watched him. So when I was in the middle school, in the high school, he told me, don't take art as your career. Don't learn art for the university. So I know, I didn't learn that. So I take English as my university. That's why today I can speak English. But after graduation, when I started my work as a translator in a joint venture, it is a joint venture with an American company. It's called the Ingersoll. Maybe some of you know that name. And after working for almost 20 years, because one day in the late 1999, you see, that's the year very important. I and my father visited a friend of my father who studied in CAFA, the school of now. It's called the Central Academy of Fine Arts. Just when we visited him, during the dinner, he told me, asked me, why don't you come to CAFA study Chunchen, called my name? I said, how can I? I don't paint. But he said, you come to learn art history and the theories, because your English is good, you understand in art, you like art, why not? So I come. When I come, I found my real life, my real hobby is not a hobby. My real life is art. Just from that year until now, I started to learn art history theory. Of course, I don't paint. But from that until now, I worked in the art world. It is only in 2009, that year, another time, I made or curated the first exhibition for my father, the solo exhibition. The first one in his whole life. Even my father told me, don't do that, we don't have that, resources, or, we are not, how to say, rich enough to do that. Ready, not ready, just, we are common people. Why we should do that? I just told him, there's a space in 798 Art Factory 0. They want to show your works. We just do it. Don't worry about it. So that's the beginning until now. So I often say, if as a son, sometimes not as a son, as a somebody, the only person know his art, know Jesus' art. If I, as a person, as a curator, if I don't tell somebody, nobody knows his art in the world. So I think that is my responsibility, not as a son, but as art historian. So I did that until today. So I think I will do that in the future. He's an artist, not my father. I take it as an artist, like a Van Gogh, not myself. Yeah, this is my true feeling. Thank you.